I am joined in studio by our senior Middle East correspondent, Ariel Osran, as well as international affairs analyst Dan Perry, also the former Europe and Middle East editor at the Associated Press. Gentlemen, thank you for being with us on the rundown this evening. And more and more of these countries, Western countries, are joining France. Now the UK is jumping off of France and stating September. This is the deadline for Israel to wrap up the war in Gaza. And if not, we're going to move forward with recognizing a Palestinian state. What does this all mean in actuality, the fact that the UK is now following suit?
I fear it means that they may harm the cause of establishing a Palestinian state. Macron seemed pretty resolute. It sounds to me like he's going to do it. The UK, trying to be clever and maintain leverage, is establishing demands of Hamas and conditions upon Israel, most of which probably will not be met. And so in September, they're going to probably have to conclude that none of their demands and conditions were met. And reading between the lines of what he said today, implicitly, that means, yes, Starmer will join Macron and the UK will recognize Palestine. I think that would be a terrible mistake. And I say that as someone who has for decades thought that Israel needs to partition from the Palestinians, whether that's in the context of a Palestinian state or some other solution. Israel cannot control the entire land between the river and the sea without ceasing to be a Jewish state, because there are 15 million people in this territory, half of whom are Jews, and the other half are Arabs. And that is a difficult choice Israel has to make. And I favor partition, but after October 7th, Israelis are in no mood to repeat the Gaza experiment in the West Bank. That is much more strategic, much closer to Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, surrounds Jerusalem on three sides. If there's even the shadow of a sliver of a hint of a doubt that Hamas might take over that territory as well, they're just not going to do it. They won't do that even if the result is total global isolation and economic sanctions. They just won't. And they probably shouldn't, because they can't take that risk. And so nothing must be done to strengthen the position of Hamas, but nothing. If you strengthen Hamas, you almost guarantee that Israel will not take the risks necessary to establish a Palestinian state, or even just to end the occupation of
And these statements, would you say they are strengthening Hamas? Because this is what the foreign minister, Gideon Saar, has said as well when it comes to the current ceasefire efforts in Gaza.
He's right. Just like a broken clock who's right twice a day, Gideon Saar was right. Because the narrative that says, look, Hamas had to do October 7th because this is what finally got the world to wake up to Palestinians' plight and to the justice of the Palestinian state, that narrative will have legs. So there's two ways to end this war, with Hamas totally delegitimized and compelled by the Arab world and by Palestinian opinion to not only hand over the keys of Gaza to an alternative, which probably has to be the Palestinian Authority, but also to disarm. Now, Israel, if it conducted itself wiser about the end game to the war, instead of blundering into a forever insurgency in Gaza, probably could achieve this, in my view, with the help of the entire Arab world. Instead of that outcome, by Israel's prolonging the war to the point that the entire globe is outraged enough that they may do this very foolish thing that Starmer and Macron are threatening to do, that will strengthen Hamas. Their support, instead of going down from whatever it is right now in the Palestinian street, let's say 40% to 55%, depending on how you define support, it could go down to 10 tomorrow if the reconstruction of Gaza were conditioned on disarmament. And Israel just ended the war and gave the Palestinians that choice. Disarm Hamas, else there will not be a reconstruction of Gaza, and yeah, we will let you leave if you want. That's one scenario, and if Hamas resists their support would go down to 10% or less. If this happens, with the war continuing and Israel clinging to its current strategy, support for Hamas will shoot to 70% because they will be seen as the force that, through the device of barbarism and heinous terrorism, yes, achieved Western recognition of a Palestinian state. This is terrible, and it should be viewed by Israel as a diplomatic emergency, basically.
International affairs analyst Dan Perry, great to hear your analysis on everything that's happening, as always. Thank you.